Now, if there's something that's going to ruffle a few feathers, it certainly wouldn't be quiet at a strata or body corporate meeting. It's the issue of visitor parking. Been there, done that. Now, it seems, particularly in our city apartments or in other big building complexes, there's never enough spots for visitors. It's a bit like female toilets at a cultural institution. There's never enough of those, and there's never enough parking places for visitors in our unit complex. Many people who live in these buildings treat the visitor spots as their own, which is part of the problem. All right, so you can tell me, have you had issues with visitor parking where you are in your unit complex, in your townhouse complex? Are the spots always full? Or you've got a lot of good people living with you and they just somehow do what humans should do and talk to each other and work it out? 131873. Well, clearly there's a problem. I've been reading about it over the weekend. Stephen Brell, as you know, no stranger to this network. He's the president of the Strata Community Association. I'm sure he's heard a few stories over the years. He joins me now. Stephen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Michael. Thank you for having me on.
No, thank you. All right. Now, visitor parking, aside from cigarette smell and smoke wafting from one balcony to the other, apparently this is the thing more people complain about than anything else. Are there actually rules in place, or is it each complex on their own?
No, there are most definitely rules in place for visitor parking. And as the name implies, the visitor parking spaces are supposed to be for visitors. You did hit a very important note there during your introduction. Is often what this comes back to is, regrettably, a lot of the local planning laws are inadequate and they don't provide for enough car spaces in apartment blocks. So what happens is, by virtue of that, a lot of the residents then see the visitor spaces as their quasi-second car parking space, and that's when we do end up with a few disputes out there in strata blocks.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when my wife and I were renting an apartment in Sydney a number of years ago, we had one parking spot with a garage, but we had one car, so that all worked out okay. But there were people that owned in the complex, and they'd been there many years, and all lovely people, but there were certain spaces at the end of driveways and, you know, common areas where certain cars would always be parked. And, you know, the newcomers, we come in and stick our car somewhere and, no, you can't park there. So, well, why not? Oh, no, well, you know, Jim Bob always parks there. Why? Yeah. Oh, well, he always has. And so you go, okay, I don't want to ruffle the feathers.
No, that's right. Yeah, no, that's right. And look, in some apartment complexes, it is a little bit of the Wild West. But getting back to your point, every strata block will have their own set of rules when it comes to how the visitor parking is allocated. Now, for most apartment blocks, those rules are the same, which is what I said before. The visitors' parking spaces are for visitors. However, in some apartment blocks where parking is at a premium, some owners' corporations will say to residents, okay, we will allow residents to park in the visitor spaces, say between the hours of 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. So park there overnight, as an example. But what's really important for everyone listening to understand is that these rules are unique to every single strata block. So you can actually set up the rules so they work favourably for your strata complex. So that's something very important for the listeners to understand.
And this is where the fights and the debates and the scraps can start, I guess. But
that's right.
But equally, you know, not everybody's a lawyer, even a bush lawyer, and so you've got to ask the question: what constitutes a visitor? Now, as I was reading in the Fin Review, which sparked my interest in all of this and reminded me of our 5 or so years in the flat, and one of the issues here is the definition of a visitor. As the author said, is it someone who drops in for an hour, has a cup of tea with Joan and then toddles off, or is it the romantic partner of a resident who arrives on a Friday night and leaves on a Monday morning having had a bit of fun? Now, you know, there's 1 hour v 48 hours parking in the spot. What's a visitor?
Yeah, and that's a very, very good question. And I don't think even the courts have defined what a visitor is. And this is where, again, an owners corporation can become quite clever with their bylaws and actually come up with their own definition of what a visitor is. So the courts will long hold that unless your name is on the lease or on title of the property, then anyone else outside of that definition is a visitor or can be classified as a visitor. Now, that's a very, very loose definition. So what a lot of owners corporations have done, exactly as you described, is define what a visitor is. So it may be that you can park in the visitor space for no longer than 24 hours, as an example. Then you need to give up the right to park there. So this is where, again, there are a lot of laws in Strata that do need to be refined and defined, and you've hit one of them right on the head, which is what is the classification of a visitor.
And look, these things are never raised until an issue is raised, and then all of a sudden everyone's got an opinion and everyone's right and everyone else is wrong, and this is where you've got to be an adult and work it out. But leaving
Exactly
the visitors aside to an extent, apartments get old, they need renovations. Sometimes the renovations are very significant. What about the tradies? A lot of apartments are built on main roads, arterial roads, thoroughfares, so the tradies can't park there. There are no parking zones. They go into the visitor parking spot. They might be there for months.
Yeah, that's right. And this is where, again, you hit the nail on the head in your introduction. This is where owners, corporations and residents in apartment blocks, they need to cooperate with each other and understand that on occasion there are going to be special times when a tradesperson will need to access the property. And it's not just renovations on apartments, it's also maintenance work on the common property itself. We're having tradespeople come in and out all the time to service the apparatus in the building. And so having a spot for them where they can park and unload their tools and whatever other equipment they need to service the building is very, very important. And this is where, we've been calling for a long time now for planning laws to be changed to allow for more parking and more spaces, more amenities in apartment blocks to make it more, amenable to 21st century living.
All right, we've probably opened a can of worms. I'll see what the listeners make of it, and I'll get their horror stories, and hopefully in among it some good stories where the adults have worked it all out. Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate it.
Right. No worries. Thank you, Michael.